Ever since 2007 began, we have made a tradition of talking to candidates for major office in Maine. The June primary right around the corner, and our guest tonight is Angus King III. He is running for the Democratic nomination in Maine's race for governor. So good to see you.
Great to be here.
Thanks for being here. So this is your first time running for a political office in Maine.
Yes, indeed.
You state on your website that if we know your dad's values, then we know you. So going back to COVID, we have seen a lot of new residents move to Maine. So how would you define yourself to those who aren't as familiar with your dad's politics or maybe haven't voted for him in the past?
Sure. I mean, if my name were Bob Smith and not Angus King, you would know me as someone who had worked for a president for 3 years in the White House. I worked for President Clinton. You'd know me as a guy who'd built thousands of units of affordable housing. You'd know me as the person who'd built a lot of renewable energy in Maine and across the country and then around the world. And you'd know me as a person who started businesses, created jobs, created housing, and done it all fundamentally by knowing how to bring people together and get things done. Turns out my name's not, Bob. My name's Angus King. So that carries an additional weight, but I am who I am, and then I just happen to have been raised by what I think is one of Maine's great public servants.
Let's jump right into some of Maine's issues. So Maine used to rank 37th in education. Data from 2025 shows that we now rank 41st in the country because of things like low preschool enrollment, low test scores. What is the first step that you would take to make Maine's education system better?
Yeah, it's a huge focus for me. It's something that Maine used to have the best schools in the country back 30 years ago, and now, as you point out, we're really toward the bottom. And I think the first thing we've got to do is how do we focus on getting kids to be able to read by the time they're in 4th grade. If you can't read when you're in 4th grade, everything else gets harder. You graduate less often, you end up in a worse place just in the long run. So reading comes first. The next piece is around training. I think we can do a lot more with high school kids and even middle school kids, training them for the jobs that we have right now and need to fill. The next piece is around teachers. How do we help support teachers? It is an incredibly hard job, and we are short on teachers. So the more we can do to support them in their career paths and their progression, I think is really important.
How do we get more teachers to stay in Maine? Because wage and what they're making, that's usually a reason that they deter from teaching here.
Yep. Part of it is around wages. The good news is the legislature just passed something where the minimum teacher salary is going to go up to $50,000 a year. I think that's a great step. I think the next piece is how do we make career paths that are clear for them so they can earn not just more work, but more money. And then I think there's also, Maine unfortunately has a very high turnover rate. Young teachers don't get the support that they need. And as I mentioned, it is a really difficult job. And so the more we can do to support early teachers so that they stay in the profession and that they're encouraged to continue is, I think, something really important for us to do.
Yeah, you point out cost. Life is expensive for everyone right now. If you've been to the grocery store, filled up your gas tank, it's expensive. How would you help the average household in Maine bring down the cost of living and then keep it there?
Yeah, I would start with household. As you point out, cost of living has gotten incredibly high here in Maine. We used to be a place that was an affordable place to live. And so families could come here, businesses could grow, and unfortunately that ability for us to afford living here has really gone away. Mainers are good at making do, but we can't rely on that going forward. First place is on housing. Housing costs have doubled in the last 7 years, and fundamentally it's because we've not been great at building housing and supporting people who build housing. So to me, building more housing is the #1 cost in most families' lives, and if we can bring that cost down, that makes the biggest difference.
Energy costs are always a huge driving force for costs across the board. You helped create the company Peaks Renewable, which simply put takes cow manure, turns it into power. It's helping the Augusta, Waterville, and Madison areas right now. That's not going to work at a large scale. So what should Maine do to lower energy costs?
Yeah. That project is a great project. It is, and importantly, did not add costs to Maine families. I would add that to the description. I think generally there are a lot of things we can do. The first is let's make sure that we ask our utilities to be partners in how do we lower costs. Right now, their incentive is to build things, and to then that increases rates. We need to provide them incentives to lower costs, to use the grid that we have more efficiently. There are lots of other states that are making great progress in terms of how do we look at efficiency, how do we look at more technology, and ultimately those things will in fact drive costs down for people.
All right, just this month, a federal court upheld Maine's 2024 law requiring a 3-day waiting period after a federal background check to obtain a gun as constitutional. Do you support keeping this law, or would you change it?
Look, Maine has a long tradition of hunting and responsible gun owners. I hunt and am a responsible gun owner. And so I think it's important that we respect that heritage. But for me, again, as a responsible gun owner, I think the 72 hours is okay. I can plan ahead for when the next season is and think about that. So I think that's a fine requirement, and I think we can navigate through it.
Politics, not always partisan, as we know. Not everybody always gets along. Do you feel that you would be able to reach across the aisle and work with Republicans?
100%. That is part of why I am running, is because I think the noise has gotten much too loud. The division fills our everyday. It fills our phones when we look at them all the time. And part of why I'm running is I come from sort of two traditions. One is growing up with my father, who is an independent and has taught me the importance of bipartisanship, of listening to people, of really being able to find ways to a solution that is founded on common ground. And then the rest of my career has been building these public goods, affordable housing, renewable energy, in the private sector. And the only way you get something done is by getting everybody together, nodding their heads and moving forward. So that experience has taught me, here's how you get these things done. And look, we all have common ground at the end of the day. And I really believe that's an important place to start, because that's how we're going to solve these huge challenges we have right now. Housing, energy, education, economic development. Those are not things that are going to be solved on a strictly partisan 51-49 vote. They're going to be solved by all of us together.
All right, Angus King III, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Again, King III is running for the Democratic nomination in Maine's race for governor. You can learn more about his campaign on our website and app. Don't go anywhere. 207 is back right after this.